revolution changed the names of the airports, but it didn't move a single brick in the streets. If you look at the 1.2 million square kilometers of this territory from a satellite, you are not looking at a unified nation. You are looking at a military-grade partition, a deliberate architectural siege that was engineered to survive the end of the regime that built it. We were told that in 1994, the walls came down. That is a lie. The walls simply became invisible to those who don't know where to look. Zoom into the outskirts of Johannesburg or the ridges of Cape Town. You will see them, the buffer zones. These are not accidental stretches of industrial wasteland or coincidental highway placements. They are precise, state-mandated belts of dead space designed to keep the unseen population physically separated from the centers of wealth. In most countries, urban planning is about growth. In South Africa, urban planning was and remains about containment. This is the most impossible country on earth because it is a place where the floor plan of a prison is being used as the foundation for a democracy. The world bought the story of the Rainbow Nation, a miraculous swap of the bloodbath for the ballot box. But for those living in the corrugated iron grids of the peripheral townships, the miracle is a myth they cannot afford to believe in. They are living on the wrong side of a geography that was built to ensure they never escape. And we are told this is the new South Africa, but the physical map reveals a systemic apartheid of infrastructure that is more entrenched today than it was 30 years ago. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I want to know exactly how far these hidden stories are reaching. We are treating the current state of this territory not as a tragedy, but as a crime scene. To understand the scale of the heist, we have to look at the cold, hard data provided by the World Bank. A forensic audit that proves South Africa is the most unequal society on the planet. This is not a standard socioeconomic gap. It is a chasm that defies the laws of social physics. In a functioning state, wealth circulates. Here, wealth is damned. The numbers are staggering. The wealthiest 10% of the population hold roughly 71% of the total net wealth. Meanwhile, the bottom 60%, nearly 36 million human beings, are forced to share less than 7%. This is the mathematical proof of a deliberate erasure. When you see these two worlds colliding on a street corner in Sandton or Stellenbosch, you aren't just seeing poverty. You are seeing a calculated economic strangulation that has been allowed to fester under the guise of progress. This inequality is the direct result of the buffer zones we identified. By physically pushing the majority to the periphery, the state ensured that the cost of participation in the economy remains prohibitively high. For a worker in an informal settlement, the journey to a first-world job is not just a commute. It is an expedition across a hostile geography, where they spend hours in transit and a massive portion of their meager earnings just to reach the places where the wealth is kept. The investigation reveals that the 1994 transition was a political success, but a spatial failure. The architects of the current system inherited a machine designed for exclusion, and instead of dismantling it, they simply optimized it for a new elite. The impossibility of South Africa lies in this specific fact. It is a wealthy country that operates by systematically inhaling the potential of its people to preserve the luxury of a few. In South Africa, the calendar is a weapon. When you walk across a single intersection in Cape Town, you aren't just crossing a street, you are stepping through a portal between two different centuries. On one side, a first-world digital economy thrives, fueled by fiber optic speed, high-frequency trading, and biometrically secured luxury estates. On the other side, less than 5 miles away, human beings survive in a pre-industrial struggle for the most basic requirements of biological life: clean water and consistent light. This is the social physics paradox. By every law of governance, a society with this level of structural friction should have collapsed decades ago. The reason it persists is because the geography was engineered to absorb the shock of human suffering. The unseen cities like Khayelitsha are not merely residential areas. They are shock absorbers. They house the millions who keep the industrial elite functioning, while remaining geographically isolated enough that their desperation never spills over into the pristine suburbs. And the investigation into the power paradox brings us into sharp focus. South Africa is a regional energy giant that exports electricity to neighboring countries. Yet its own unseen citizens endure load shedding, state-mandated rolling blackouts that can plunge the poorest neighborhoods into total darkness for 12 hours a day. While the industrial elite in the gated fortresses switch to private generators, the poor are forced back into a dark age. This isn't a failure of the grid. It is a prioritization of the machine over the human. The hidden truth is that the 1994 miracle was a trade. The state traded the visible violence of the police for the invisible violence of the map. We were told the country was being unified. But the physical infrastructure was being fortified to ensure that the unseen majority stayed exactly where the old regime wanted them, on the outside looking in. The impossibility of South Africa is not a mystery to be solved. It is an alarm that the world has learned to ignore. We have been conditioned to see the Rainbow Nation as a closed chapter of history, a victory for the human spirit that requires no further scrutiny. But while you've been watching the tourism ads, a radioactive environmental and social debt has been compounding in the dark. The geography is screaming, the soil is thirsty for justice, and the miracle is running out of time. The investigation we are conducting here is not for the faint-hearted or the casually curious. It is for those who realize that the same systems of exclusion being perfected in South Africa are the blueprints for the gated world of the future. If you turn away now, you aren't just ignoring a foreign tragedy. You are choosing to remain illiterate in the language of your own coming reality. Most people will look away from this because comfort is easier than the truth. If you have the heart to stay, subscribe. If you don't, tell us in the comments exactly why you prefer to remain blind while a nation burns. Every second you spend in silence is a second spent helping the architects of this erasure bury the evidence. But the concrete ghosts of the past are nothing compared to the ticking time bomb buried 2 miles beneath the surface. To understand why the new South Africa is a coat of paint on a crumbling wall, we must descend from the satellite view and dig into the literal dirt. The real heist didn't begin in 1948 with the official laws of segregation. It began in 1913 with a piece of paper that effectively turned an entire sovereign people into trespassers in their own homes. The 1948 official start of apartheid is a historical deception used to sanitize the depth of the wound. If you want to find the real origin of the impossible map, you have to look at 1913. That year, the state passed the Natives Land Act, a document that functioned as a legal death warrant for the African way of life. It decreed that the majority of the population would be restricted to a mere 13% of the land. This was not a minor zoning adjustment. It was a total biological and economic strangulation. By the time the world began to notice the regime in the late 1940s, the most violent part of the theft was already 30 years old. This act effectively turned a sovereign people into trespassers on their own ancestral soil overnight. It was the first stroke of the pen that drew the lines of the buffer zones we see today, ensuring that the black majority would never own the means to feed themselves, forcing them into a state of permanent desperation. The human consequence of this enclosure was a calculated transition from self-sufficient farmers to a landless labor force. Before 1913, African farmers were the backbone of the region's agricultural success, often outcompeting colonial settlers. The state realized that as long as a man could grow his own food on his own land, he would never descend into a dark, dangerous mine shaft for a pittance. The Land Act was designed to break that independence. It squeezed millions of people into overcrowded communal plots, where the soil was too thin and the space too small to sustain life. This created a man-made famine, a structural poverty that left the head of the household with only two choices: stay and watch his family starve, or migrate hundreds of miles away to work the gold veins for the very people who had stolen his farm. This was the birth of the wage slave system. The geography was now a machine for the extraction of human energy. By stripping away the right to own productive soil, the administration ensured a steady flow of cheap, desperate bodies toward the burgeoning industrial centers. This wasn't just about land. It was about the destruction of the African family unit. So to keep this workforce controllable, the state built massive single-sex labor hostels. Men were separated from their wives and children for 11 months of every year. This created a social vacuum, a cycle of systemic trauma and fatherlessness that was baked into the nation's DNA over a century ago. The high crime rates and social fractures we see in 2026 are not accidents of culture. They are the predictable results of a labor system that treated human beings as disposable tools for a mineral energy complex. If you travel to the rural Eastern Cape today, the 1913 ghost is still haunting the landscape. You can see it in the sharp, violent contrast of the fences. On one side, thousands of families are packed into a patchwork of exhausted communal plots, where the earth is gray and the cattle are thin. On the other side of the wire, vast, cheap privately owned commercial farms stretch to the horizon, productive, green, and largely empty. This physical juxtaposition is a constant, visible reminder of a theft that was never rectified by the ballot box. When you steal a person's land, you steal their ancestors' graves and their sense of belonging. The tension in the air here is the weight of unfinished business. But as heavy as this rural silence feels, it is nothing compared to the industrial noise of the place where all this stolen labor was sent to die. We have to go to the source of the wealth to find the heart of the mystery. Johannesburg is not a city in the traditional sense. It is a mining camp with a flag. Every skyscraper, every highway, and every luxury mall in this metropolis was built on top of a hole in the dirt. To understand the impossible nature of this place, and we have to strip away the branding of the City of Gold and look at the original intent of its architects. When gold was discovered in the Witwatersrand in 1886, the colonial administration didn't set out to build a home for a nation. They set out to build a machine for extraction. The geography of the city was dictated by the reef, a massive subterranean blood vein of wealth that required a constant, massive influx of human energy to bring to the surface. The streets were not laid out for the convenience of citizens, but for the movement of ore and the containment of the hands that dug it. This was an urban environment forged in the fires of industrial greed, where the human beings were always secondary to the mineral. The result is a landscape that feels temporary, even after a century, because it was never designed for life. It was designed for the depletion of the earth and the exhaustion of the poor. The most brutal evidence of this design is found in the single-sex labor hostels. These massive gray dormitories were the state's answer to a fundamental problem. How do you utilize a workforce without allowing them to belong? The solution was a form of architectural social engineering. By housing men in cramped, fortress-like structures, separated from their wives and children for nearly the entire year, the state ensured that the African worker remained a perpetual visitor in the economic heart of his own country. These hostels were not just residences, they were tools of control. They prevented the formation of stable, unified communities that could challenge the authority of the mining houses. Inside these walls, privacy was non-existent. One in the atmosphere was one of calculated desolation. The state wanted the labor, but it feared the people. By keeping the men isolated and the women in the rural periphery, they created a fragmented society that was easier to dominate. This architecture of despair ensured that the wealth of the mines stayed in the hands of the elite, while the social cost of the extraction was dumped back onto the families hundreds of miles away. This migrant labor system functioned as a weapon of industrial dominance, using distance to shatter the African family unit. For over 100 years, the strongest men were sucked out of the rural areas and injected into the dark shafts of the Witwatersrand, leaving behind a countryside of grandmothers and children. This created a social vacuum that the nation has never recovered from. When you remove the father from the home by legislative force, you aren't just managing labor, you are destroying the fabric of future generations. The state realized that a man with a family to protect is a man who will demand rights, safety, and a living wage. A man alone in a hostel, however, is a man who can be paid a pittance and discarded when his lungs fail. This was the true cost of the gold, not just the sweat of the miners, but the systemic trauma of millions of children growing up seeing their fathers only once a year. This intentional destruction of the family was the ultimate insurance policy for the mineral energy complex, ensuring that the labor force remained desperate and the resistance remained fractured. But the wealth generated by this trauma didn't stay in the mines. It flowed upward into the pockets of a global elite, leaving the miners with nothing but dust in their lungs. Even as the gold veins began to run dry, the geography of exclusion remained. The wealth created the gleaming towers of the city center, but the people who built those towers were pushed further and further out into the dead spaces of the map. This brings us to the next layer of the investigation. The gold rush created a gravity that pulled millions toward the city, but the buffer zones ensured they would never actually arrive. To see where this system of containment finally reached its structural limit, we have to leave the skyscrapers behind and head toward the places the maps try to ignore. We have to look at the invisible cities that house the millions who provide the labor, but are denied the light. The investigation is moving from the source of the wealth to the frontier of the struggle, where the impossible reality of the modern state is written in corrugated iron. If you look at a commercial map of Cape Town or Johannesburg, you will see a detailed grid of streets, parks, and shopping centers in the affluent hubs. But as your eyes move toward the periphery, the detail begins to fade. Vast areas that house millions of people, such as Khayelitsha or Diepsloot, are often rendered as gray blocks or empty voids. This is the cartography of erasure. It is a deliberate choice by the state and the private sector to treat these human settlements as temporary anomalies rather than permanent cities. By leaving these regions off the official grid, the authorities justify the lack of basic infrastructure. If a street doesn't have a name on a map, the state doesn't have to provide a sewer line, a police station, or a school. This geographical gaslighting forces millions to live in a state of administrative non-existence. They are there physically, their labor powers the city every morning, but on the documents that govern the land, they are invisible. This is not a failure of technology. It is a mechanical exclusion designed to keep the unseen population from claiming their right to the city. This invisibility translates directly into a brutal health divide. In the hidden regions of the townships, 9 out of 10 households lack any form of medical insurance. They are forced to rely on a public healthcare system that has been systematically starved of resources for decades. Here, a treatable infection can become a death sentence because the local clinic is overwhelmed or empty of supplies. Meanwhile, just a few miles away across the buffer zone, the affluent minority utilizes a private healthcare sector that rivals the best in Western Europe. This is the human cost of the map. The geography ensures that the poor are kept in a state of permanent physical vulnerability. When a pandemic or a local outbreak hits, these invisible cities become laboratories of suffering, while the gated estates remain insulated by their wealth. The state has effectively privatized the right to survive, leaving the majority to navigate a collapsing system that was never designed to save them. The land is not just divided by fences, it is divided by the very air people breathe and the care they can afford. Again, the most visible manifestation of this injustice is the power paradox. South Africa is a nation that prides itself on being an industrial giant, yet it cannot keep the lights on for its own people. Through the system of load shedding, the state-owned utility enforces rolling blackouts that last for half the day. But look closer at where the darkness falls. While the industrial zones and the high-security clusters often remain powered to preserve the economy of the elite, the informal settlements are the first to be cut off. In these regions, the darkness is not just an inconvenience, it is a predator. It shuts down small businesses, ruins the meager food supplies of the poor, and turns the unlit streets into zones of extreme danger. The state is effectively forcing the most vulnerable to subsidize the energy consumption of the wealthy. And they are plunged into a dark age every evening to ensure the mines and factories continue to churn out profit. This is not a technical failure of the grid. It is a moral failure of the state. It is a system that values the output of the machine over the life of the citizen. Every second you ignore these stories, the erasure becomes more permanent. The forces that built these buffer zones are counting on your apathy to keep these people invisible. Subscribe now to keep these people on the map and to ensure these buried truths are never silenced again. If you're walking away now, leave a comment explaining why their struggle isn't worth 2 seconds of your time. Tell the millions living in the shadows why you've decided that their story doesn't matter. The investigation cannot stop at the edge of the city. To understand the full scale of this impossible country, we must follow the power lines and the mineral veins to the northwest. We must look at the ground beneath the feet of those who dig for the world's most precious metals. The mystery of why a wealthy country remains so broken is buried in the dust of the platinum mines. And the truth of what happened there is more violent than anything the official records will ever admit. The investigation is moving from the invisible city to the calculated deprivation of the mineral frontier. South Africa holds a global monopoly that the modern world cannot function without. Roughly 80% of the world's platinum reserves are concentrated in a narrow geological stretch in the Northwest province. This metal is the backbone of the green energy transition, essential for hydrogen fuel cells and the catalytic converters that scrub the air in every major city on the planet. Yet if you stand on the ground directly above these multi-billion-dollar veins, the global narrative of progress vanishes. The communities living on top of the world's wealth exist in a state of primitive struggle. While the platinum they dig powers the high-tech economies of the West, the miners themselves often live in shacks without running water or sanitation. This is not an accident of development. It is the fundamental logic of the extraction camp. The geography is used to keep the cost of human life low, so the value of the mineral can remain high. It is a jarring physical proof that the more valuable the earth becomes, the more disposable the people on top of it are treated by the state and the corporations. When this state of calculated deprivation is a deliberate management strategy to keep the platinum flowing at a price the global market demands, the mining houses and the government have maintained a system that resembles the 19th century more than the 21st. Infrastructure is intentionally withheld from the settlements surrounding the mines to prevent the workforce from becoming a permanent, politically active citizenry. By keeping the miners in a state of precariousness, living in informal housing with no secure land tenure, the authorities ensure that the focus remains on daily survival rather than collective bargaining. The schools are overcrowded, the roads are unpaved, and the local economy is entirely dependent on the company store. This creates a geography of total dependence. The miner is not a citizen of a republic. He is a subject of the mine. This isolation is reinforced by the vast distances between the shafts and the urban centers, ensuring that the unrest born of this deprivation remains contained within the dusty periphery of the Northwest, far from the eyes of the international investors. In August 2012, the world was forced to look at this periphery when the state police opened fire on striking miners at Marikana, killing 34 people. The official narrative tried to frame this as a tragic breakdown in communication or a spontaneous act of self-defense. The investigation reveals a much darker truth. The Marikana massacre was a mechanical necessity. The miners were demanding a living wage that would have disrupted the entire financial architecture of the mineral energy complex. When the workers refused to back down, the state acted as the private security force for the mining corporations. This was the inevitable explosion of a system that cannot tolerate the organized humanity of its labor force. The massacre sent a clear message. The preservation of the platinum supply is more important than the lives of the people who extract it. The bullets fired that day were not just aimed at the men on the hill, they were aimed at any hope that the new South Africa would value its people over its exports. The violence of the corporate mines has pushed thousands into an even more dangerous shadow economy. As the official mining houses close older shafts to cut costs, they leave behind a toxic landscape in a desperate population. This has led to the rise of the Zama-Zamas, thousands of men who descend into abandoned, crumbling shafts to mine the remaining flecks of gold and platinum by hand. They live in total darkness for months, governed not by labor laws, but by paramilitary syndicates and the constant threat of cave-ins. This is the ultimate destination of the landless labor force, a return to the earth in a literal, subterranean fight for survival. The investigation is now moving from the corporate violence of the surface to the lawless desperation of the deep. We must enter the abandoned underworld to see what happens to a people when the official economy decides they are no longer useful. The mystery of the unseen South Africa is about to go 2 miles deep into a world where the state does not exist. 2 miles below the surface of the Witwatersrand, the authority of the South African state ceases to exist. Here, in the crumbling arteries of abandoned gold mines, a shadow society has taken root. These are the Zama-Zamas, a name that translates to those who try. These men are the final byproduct of a century of land theft and industrial displacement. When the official mines reach the end of their profitable life, they are often left in a state of suspended decay. The Zama-Zamas descend into these lightless voids, carrying nothing but hand tools and enough supplies to last for months. They live in a world of constant humidity, falling rocks, and recycled air, chipping away at the pillars of ore that the corporations deem too dangerous or expensive to harvest. This is not just a job, it is a subterranean exile. The investigation reveals that this shadow economy is now one of the only survival mechanisms left for a generation that the surface world has discarded. They are the human evidence of a system that extracts value until the very last grain of gold is gone, leaving the people to scavenge the ruins of their own exploitation. The existence of this underworld is made possible by a massive act of corporate and regulatory negligence. When a mining multinational decides a shaft is no longer lucrative, the law requires a comprehensive and secure closure to prevent environmental damage and human tragedy. Instead, many corporations utilize legal loopholes or declare bankruptcy to avoid the astronomical costs of sealing these deep-level death traps. By leaving these shafts partially accessible, they effectively bait the most desperate members of society into a hazardous landscape. The state, overwhelmed or complicit, fails to enforce the necessary environmental safeguards. This abandonment is a calculated financial decision. It is cheaper for a corporation to let a shaft become a haunt for illegal miners than it is to seal it permanently. The result is a toxic inheritance of unstable ground and open portals into a lawless deep. The unseen South African is thus pushed into a literal hole in the ground, forced to risk an agonizing death in the dark because the official economy has no place for his hands or his humanity. Inside these abandoned shafts, the absence of the state has been filled by a violent paramilitary order. The Zama underworld is not a chaotic free-for-all. It is a highly organized and brutal hierarchy governed by international syndicates. These groups provide the logistics, the explosives, the food, and the mercury needed to process gold underground in exchange for total control over the miners. The tunnels are divided into territories and the borders are enforced with assault rifles. Tribal warfare and gang-related executions are common occurrences in the deep, away from the eyes of the police and the media. This is a pure extraction economy, stripped of all legal protections and human rights. The gold pulled from these shafts eventually enters the global market, laundered through legitimate refineries, but its origin is written in the blood of those who never return to the surface. The investigation shows that the state's failure to manage its mineral heritage has allowed a parallel, violent government to take root within its own borders, preying on the desperation created by a century of exclusion. The danger of this underworld is not confined to the dark tunnels. It is rising to the surface in the form of a biological catastrophe. As the miners use toxic chemicals like mercury and cyanide to process gold in the shafts, they are poisoning the very earth they inhabit. But the greatest threat comes from the silence of the state regarding the radioactive legacy of these mines. This physical peril is the bridge to our next investigation in the Highveld priority area. The same system that abandons miners in the deep is the one that poisons the air and water for millions on the surface. We are moving from the lawless shafts of the Witwatersrand to the industrial heartland of Mpumalanga, where the very act of breathing has become a hazard of poverty. The mystery of the impossible country is expanding from the violence of the tunnels to a systemic assault on the lungs and the water of a nation. The investigation is about to reveal that in South Africa, even the elements of life have been weaponized against the poor. In the Mpumalanga Highveld, the sky is a visible record of industrial violence. This region houses the highest concentration of coal-fired power plants on the planet, creating a geographical zone where the air is no longer a natural resource, but a toxic byproduct of the mineral energy complex. The investigation reveals that the sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide levels here frequently dwarf those of the most polluted cities in Asia. This is the industrial lung of the nation, a landscape dominated by massive smokestacks that churn out the electricity required to keep the mines running and the luxury malls illuminated. To the state, this is a vital economic hub. To the investigator, it is a sacrifice zone. The geography here was chosen because the coal is abundant, but also because the people living downwind were deemed politically expendable. The haze that hangs over this plateau is a physical manifestation of a social contract that has been shredded. It is a place where the atmosphere itself has been privatized and polluted to preserve the profit margins of a predatory elite, leaving the local population to navigate an environment that is actively hostile to biological life. The human consequence of this pollution is written in the medical records of the hidden communities of Imalaleni and Middelburg. And this is the breath of the poor. In these townships, respiratory illnesses, chronic asthma, and early mortality are not just common, they are expected. Children grow up in the shadow of cooling towers, inhaling a cocktail of heavy metals and fine particulate matter every hour of their lives. The state has documented these health impacts for decades, yet the smokestacks never stop. There is a brutal irony in the fact that the people whose health is being destroyed to power the national grid are often the same people who cannot afford the electricity being generated in their backyards. They bear the full biological cost of the nation's energy production while receiving none of the economic benefits. This is a systemic assault on the lungs of the poor. The land here is not a home. It is an open-air infirmary where the act of breathing is a slow, agonizing gamble. The investigation shows that in the High Veld, the state has effectively traded the life expectancy of the majority for the convenience of the industrial elite. The state-owned power utility operates with a level of legal immunity that makes it the untouchable backbone of the economy. Despite numerous court rulings and environmental regulations, the utility is frequently granted exemptions that allow it to continue emitting pollutants far beyond legal limits. The justification is always the same: the economy cannot survive without the power. This creates a geography of lawlessness, where the health of the citizen is legally subordinated to the output of the machine. And the investigation reveals that the regulatory bodies designed to protect the environment are often toothless or intentionally sidelined by the political interests tied to the coal industry. This is a closed loop of complicity. The coal is mined by the landless labor force, burned in the state-controlled plants, and the resulting wealth is siphoned away, leaving nothing but a wasteland of ash and illness. The unseen South African in this region is trapped in a landscape where the very laws of the land have been suspended to ensure that the fires of extraction never go out, regardless of the human toll. The algorithm of the modern world is designed to hide these tragedies behind a wall of travel vlogs and manufactured distractions. If you don't subscribe now, this story and the millions of voices trapped in the High Veld haze will disappear forever into the digital void. We are the only ones digging into the geography of this erasure, and the forces of comfort are counting on you to look away. If you choose to let this investigation die, tell the community in the comments why you think silence is an option. Tell the families in Emaleleni why their struggle for clean air isn't worth a second of your attention. The investigation is now moving from the toxic air of the surface to a hidden, rising poison in the deep. The same industrial greed that has choked the sky is now filling the abandoned mines beneath the city with an acidic cocktail that threatens the very water supply of the nation. We are heading toward an environmental time bomb that the authorities are desperate to keep buried. When the mystery is no longer just about the past, it is about the survival of the future. Beneath the pavement of Johannesburg, a toxic tide is rising. For over a century, the deep-level gold mines were kept dry by massive pumping stations, allowing the extraction of the world's greatest mineral hoard. But as the corporations extracted the last of the profit and switched off the pumps, a dark chemical process began. The empty shafts are now filling with groundwater that reacts with exposed sulfide minerals in the rock. The result is acid mine drainage, a highly corrosive orange liquid laden with heavy metals like arsenic, cadmium, and lead. This is not a static pool of waste. It is a subterranean flood that is moving toward the surface at a rate of several meters every month. The investigation reveals that the water level is already dangerously close to the critical sunrise point, where it will begin to spill into the regional water table. This is the ultimate environmental legacy of the gold rush, a rising poison that threatens to contaminate the very lifeblood of the nation's economic heartland while the authorities watch the clock in silence. The danger of this rising water is compounded by a hidden radioactive threat. The gold veins of the Witwatersrand are geologically intertwined with uranium. For decades, the waste from these mines was dumped in massive, unlined tailings dams that now ring the city like a crown of thorns. As the acidic mine water rises, it dissolves this uranium, creating a radioactive cocktail that is moving toward the rivers and aquifers used by millions of people. And the unseen communities living in the shadow of these mine dumps are already showing signs of chronic heavy metal poisoning, with children playing in dust that carries a high concentration of toxins. This is the uranium legacy that the official narrative refuses to address. The geography of the city is now a trap. The same ground that provided the wealth for the global elite is now a source of permanent contamination. It is a biological tax levied against the poor who cannot afford to buy bottled water or move away from the toxic zones where the earth itself has been turned into a weapon of mass displacement. The failure to address this rising poison is not a matter of technical inability, but a policy of denial. A long-term, sustainable treatment solution would require billions in investment from the mining industry and the state, money that neither is willing to relinquish. Instead, the authorities have favored short-term mitigation strategies that do little more than neutralize the acidity, leaving the heavy metals and radioactive elements in the water. This is a calculated act of negligence. By the time the catastrophe becomes unavoidable, the corporations that created the mess will have long since vanished behind layers of legal restructuring and bankruptcy filings. The state, meanwhile, continues to prioritize the immediate needs of the industrial elite over the long-term survival of the water supply. This is the mechanical reality of the extraction camp. You take what is valuable and you leave the wreckage for the next generation to navigate. The mystery of the rising poison is not whether it will spill over, but why the people in power have decided that the destruction of the water table is an acceptable price for another decade of profit. This environmental negligence is the physical manifestation of a deeper, systemic rot. The same institutional cannibalism that allows the water to rise and the air to choke is the force that has been hollowed out the state from within. The investigation shows that the failure to protect the landscape is a direct result of the heist taking place in the corridors of power. The money meant for water treatment, for hospitals, and for infrastructure is being siphoned out of the economy by a predatory network that has mastered the art of state-sponsored theft. This brings us to the next layer of our inquiry. In order to understand the impossible reality of a wealthy country with collapsing services, we must look at the mechanics of state capture. We are moving from the toxic water in the mines to the vanishing billions in the treasury. The mystery of the unseen South Africa is about to reveal its most devastating hidden truth, that the nation's own leaders have been systematically inhaling its future. The heist that crippled the nation was not a series of isolated thefts, but a total mechanical repurposing of the state. Over the last decade, at least 1.5 trillion rand was siphoned out of the public treasury through a process of institutional cannibalism. This was a sophisticated operation where the vital organs of the government, the energy utility, the transport network, the tax authority, were turned into extraction sites for a predatory elite. The architects of this system did not just steal money, they broke the machinery of governance itself. They replaced skilled administrators with loyalists whose only job was to facilitate the flow of capital into private offshore accounts. The investigation shows that this was the final stage of the extraction camp logic. Once the mineral wealth had been siphoned, the elite turned to the state's own budget as the new frontier. This theft was the primary reason the new South Africa failed to fulfill its promise. The wealth that should have built the infrastructure for the majority was instead used to purchase the silence and cooperation of a transnational criminal network. When the destruction of the national rail system is the most visible scar of this predatory procurement. For the landless labor force, the rails were the only affordable way to bridge the massive distances created by the buffer zones. But under the weight of state capture, the national transport utility was hollowed out. Contracts for new locomotives were inflated by billions, while the existing infrastructure was left to rot. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was an invitation for the shadow economy to move in. As security budgets were looted, thousands of miles of copper cable and steel tracks were stripped and sold for scrap. The result is a broken spine. Today, the trains that once carried millions of workers to the city centers have largely ceased to run. This has forced the poorest citizens into expensive, dangerous, and unregulated taxi networks, further draining their meager incomes. The collapse of the rails is a physical proof of how the elite's greed has effectively re-imprisoned the majority within the geographical cages designed by the old regime. While the public looked to the parliament for leadership, a shadow cabinet was operating in the dark. This parallel power structure bypassed every democratic check and balance to dictate national policy for private gain. The investigation reveals that key ministerial appointments were vetted not by the president, but by a family of foreign businessmen who had effectively purchased the executive branch. This network had the power to fire anyone who stood in the way of their next multi-billion-dollar contract. This shadow government turned the entire country into a private enterprise. They manipulated the currency, influenced the national intelligence services, and ensured that the police were too compromised to investigate the theft. The tension we feel in the streets today is the realization that the democratic vote was a hollow gesture. The real decisions were made in a private estate behind high walls, where the future of 59 million people was traded for a few luxury properties in a fleet of private jets. This financial hollowing of the state has led directly to the current breakdown in social order. When the money for hospitals, schools, and water treatment vanishes, the geography of the country becomes a powder keg. The state is no longer a provider of services. It is a ghost that only appears when it is time to collect taxes or enforce the containment of the poor. This brings us to the final verdict of our investigation. The impossible reality of South Africa is not a mystery of culture or a failure of the people. It is the result of a century-long siege that began with land theft in 1913, continued through the industrial violence of the mines, and culminated in the total cannibalization of the modern state. We are moving toward the ultimate conclusion of this investigation. We must now ask the most difficult question of all. Is this a country that is rebuilding, or is it a nation that has already been sold to the highest bidder? The investigation is concluding where the map ends, at the brink of a total systemic collapse. The South African state has lost its monopoly on force. In its place, a geography of paranoia has emerged, one fueled by an industry that employs over 500,000 private security officers, a number that significantly exceeds the entire national police force. This is the privatization of peace. The landscape is no longer defined by public safety, but by the ability to pay for protection. High security clusters and residential fortresses have become the new city-states, each with its own private army, surveillance network, and rapid response team. The investigation shows that this is not just a reaction to crime, it is the final fragmentation of the social contract. When the wealthy withdraw behind electric fences and armored gates, they are not just seeking safety. They are opting out of the shared reality of the nation. The geography is now a patchwork of high-security islands separated by a sea of neglected public space. This creates a psychological chasm where the citizen of the enclave and the resident of the township no longer occupy the same world, even when they are separated by only a single highway. The ultimate evolution of this exclusion is the biometric eco-estate. These are not merely neighborhoods, they are automated simulations of a first-world existence, surgically removed from the surrounding poverty. To enter, one must pass through facial recognition scanners and fingerprint readers, handing over biological data in exchange for a manufactured sense of tranquility. Inside these walls, the infrastructure is private. The water is filtered through independent systems. The lights are powered by massive solar arrays, and the roads are maintained by corporate levies. This is the architectural perfection of the buffer zone. It utilizes technology to automate the exclusion that was once enforced by law. The irony is that these estates are often marketed as sustainable and green, yet they represent the height of social unsustainability. They are designed to ensure that the unseen majority remains an abstraction, a labor force that disappears at sunset, leaving the residents to live in a controlled environment where the consequences of a century of theft are never allowed to cross the perimeter. While the elite purchase peace behind glass and steel, the communities in the mud are left to fend for themselves. In the townships where the state police are a rare and often distrusted presence, a brutal form of vigilante justice has filled the vacuum. This is the peace of the desperate. Informal community groups and street committees have become the judge, while jury and executioner in an effort to maintain some semblance of order in an abandoned landscape. The investigation reveals that this is the inevitable result of the state's retreat. When you have no access to the private security machine and the public authorities have been hollowed out by corruption, the only law left is the one enforced by the crowd. This creates a cycle of violence where the most vulnerable are caught between the predatory syndicates and the reactive brutality of their own neighbors. The geography of the mud is a map of survival, where the absence of formal justice has forced the poor to weaponize their own desperation just to see the next morning. Safety is becoming a luxury only the rich can buy, and the rest of the world is watching this blueprint with quiet interest. If you aren't subscribed, you are missing the final analysis of how this model of exclusion is being exported to the global stage. We are showing you the future of a world where the social contract is replaced by a subscription fee. If you think you're safe enough to ignore this, explain your reasoning in the comments. Tell the people living in the shadow of the biometric walls why you believe your own gates will never be breached. The investigation is reaching its final verdict. The impossible nature of South Africa is not a failure of democracy, but a success of the extraction machine. We are moving toward the closing summary of this entire journey, the final truth about a country that was never meant to survive its own wealth. The investigation concludes with the realization that the map is not broken. It is working exactly as it was designed. In the townships where the infrastructure has reached its breaking point, a horizontal conflict has replaced the struggle against the architects of the system. This is the resource war between the poor. When the water stops flowing and the lights stay dark, the frustration is rarely directed upward toward the gated estates or the ministerial offices. Instead, it is pushed sideways. The investigation shows that the systemic failure of the state to provide basic services has created a vacuum where neighbors turn on neighbors. In this environment, a person's country of origin becomes a marker for survival. The landless poor, already pushed to the edge of the map, find themselves competing with migrants from across the continent for the few remaining crumbs of a collapsing economy. This is a geography of friction, where the lack of a single job or a spot in a crowded clinic can ignite a flashpoint of violence. The state has effectively engineered a situation where the most marginalized members of society are forced to cannibalize one another just to maintain a foothold in a landscape that was never designed to hold them. This lateral violence serves as a powerful scapegoat mechanism for the predatory elite. By allowing the narrative of the foreign threat to take root in the public consciousness, the authorities can successfully distract from the trillion-rand theft in the corridors of power. It is a cynical political utility. As long as the residents of the informal settlements are blaming the migrant shopkeeper for their poverty, and they are not looking at the billion-dollar procurement fraud that hollowed out the national rail system or the energy grid. Xenophobia is the shield that protects the mineral energy complex. The state often fuels this fire with inflammatory rhetoric, using the presence of the other to explain away the absence of a future. This creates a psychological barrier that prevents the formation of a unified front against the systemic rot. The tragedy of the unseen South African is that their anger is being harvested and redirected against people who are even more vulnerable than themselves, ensuring that the real culprits remain safe behind their biometric walls and offshore bank accounts. To be a migrant or a landless resident in these zones is to experience total erasure. These individuals are deleted from the census, they're ignored by the planners, and scrubbed from the social conscience of the nation. They exist in a state of permanent administrative limbo, where no document validates their existence and no map acknowledges their home. This psychological reality is one of profound isolation. When a community is erased from the official record, the state no longer has a moral or legal obligation to protect it. This invisibility is a form of violence in itself. It tells the human being that their life has no weight, that their labor is a commodity to be exploited, and that their death will go unrecorded. The investigation reveals that this erasure is not a mistake of the bureaucracy. It is a requirement for the extraction machine to function. By rendering millions of people invisible, the system can continue to ignore the biological and social cost of its operations. The unseen South Africa is a place where the human soul is ground down by the realization that in the eyes of the state, you simply do not exist. This social fragmentation is the final indicator of a nation that has been successfully divided against itself. The fault lines of the past have been reinforced by a new, digital exclusion, ensuring that the struggle for a shared future remains fractured and ineffective. We are seeing the closing realization of a century-long investigation. The system hasn't failed. It has achieved its ultimate goal of creating a self-sustaining cycle of deprivation and distraction. This brings us to the definitive summary of the unseen South Africa. We have traveled from the gold reefs of the deep to the toxic haze of the high veld, and from the biometric fortresses of the elite to the vigilante justice of the mud. Now we must face the final verdict. The investigation is concluding with a look at the architectural residue of this entire journey, asking what remains when a country has been hollowed out for its minerals and its budget. We are moving toward the closing words of a story that no one was ever supposed to tell. The myth of the South African miracle has finally run out of time. For 3 decades, the world watched a narrative of reconciliation that masked the steady rot of the foundations. The investigation reveals that the terminal failure of this project is now visible in the 60% youth unemployment rate. This is not just a statistic, it is a demographic clock ticking toward a total systemic rupture. An entire generation has been born into a country that has no place for them, no use for their labor, and no path for their progression. They are the born frees who inherited nothing but the debt and the deprivation of their parents. The state's promise of a better life has been replaced by a permanent state of waiting for a job that doesn't exist, for a house that will never be built, and for a justice that has been sold to the highest bidder. The Rainbow Nation was a branding exercise designed to reassure international investors, while the mechanics of the extraction camp remained unchanged. Now, as the youth realized that the miracle was a lie, the social fabric is tearing apart at the seams. The final verdict of this investigation is that South Africa is not a failing state. It is a highly efficient system of exclusion that has reached its absolute limit. From the reefs of the Witwatersrand to the biometric estates of the wealthy, every inch of this geography was designed to separate the wealth from the people who produce it. The state did not break down. It functioned exactly as the architects of the mineral energy complex intended. It siphoned the resources, contained the labor force behind buffer zones, and protected the interests of a global elite. The impossible reality of the country is that it is a corporation masquerading as a republic. The infrastructure collapse, the rising acid water, and the paramilitary underworld are not accidents. They are the inevitable leftovers of a century of industrial cannibalism. The system has reached its geographical and social boundaries. There is no more land to steal, no more minerals to scavenge without consequence, and no more patience left in the informal settlements. The machine has finally run out of human energy to consume. The world wants you to forget these findings because the South African blueprint is being used to build the walls of your own future. If you do not subscribe now, you are actively helping the architects of this system bury the truth. You are choosing to look away while millions of lives are erased from the record to protect the profit margins of a predatory network. This investigation is the only thing standing between these stories and the digital void. If you are leaving us now Enter the comments and tell the millions who have no voice why you've decided to stop listening. Explain why their struggle for air, water, and a place on the map isn't worth the time it takes to witness it. The forces of erasure are powerful, but they depend entirely on your apathy. Every time you turn away, the buffer zones grow wider and the darkness in the townships grows deeper. The investigation is over, but the reality for those on the ground remains a daily fight against a system that has decided they are redundant. The truth is that the gold never belonged to the people, and the land never truly changed hands. We have uncovered a landscape where the past is not a memory, but a living, breathing mechanism of control. The fences are higher, the sensors are sharper, and the exclusion is more absolute than it was a generation ago. The wealth of the nation continues to flow out through the same channels, leaving behind a toxic residue and a population trapped in a geography of despair. This is the ultimate finding of our journey into the unseen regions. The South African experiment did not fail because of a lack of resources or a lack of talent. It was systematically dismantled by a leadership that chose the logic of the extraction camp over the survival of the citizen. The country is not a home for its people, but a high-security warehouse for the world's most precious minerals. South Africa was never meant to be a nation. It was only ever meant to be a mine.